We're investing in states and not just in races. So what I mean by that is we are building the red wall, Arizona, Nevada, New Hampshire. That's going to be very important to us. We're going to ensure that President Trump has Congress for all 4 years. We are going to get my husband's friend, J.D. Vance, elected for 48 in the most resounding way possible. Kirk, my incredible husband at UVU, Caleb has persisted with the same gift. Grit. It has been a long day. Trust me, you're not a grifter, honey. Has persisted with the same gift. Grit. It has been a long day.
Is what should have everyone paying attention. She was talking about Turning Point's political strategy for upcoming elections. She mentioned building what she called a red wall in Arizona, Nevada, and New Hampshire. She talked about ensuring Trump has Congress for all 4 years, standard political strategy stuff. But then she said something that made jaws drop across the room. She explicitly endorsed J.D. Vance for president in 2028. Let me say that again. The widow of Charlie Kirk, just months after her husband was killed, is already out here publicly endorsing the next presidential candidate for an election that's still years away. Think about the timeline here for a second. We haven't even gotten through the 2026 midterms yet. We're supposed to be focused on the current administration and the immediate legislative battles ahead. But Erika Kirk is already campaigning for 2028 as if the next several years are just a formality, as if the plan is already locked in, and all that matters now is making sure everyone falls in line behind J.D. Vance as the heir apparent. That alone should raise eyebrows, because it shows you exactly how choreographed and pre-planned all of this really is. These aren't grassroots movements responding to what voters want. This is a machine deciding who the next leader will be and then manufacturing consent around that choice. But here's where it gets absolutely devastating. While Erika Kirk was on stage talking about someone named Caleb who's continuing the work at Turning Point, she made a slip that exposed the entire operation. She said that despite the loss of Charlie Kirk, Caleb has persisted with the same grift. Then she immediately caught herself and tried to correct it. Excuse me, not grift, I meant grit. It's been a long day. But the damage was done. The word was already out there. She called it a grift before her brain could stop her mouth. And that one word, that one accidental moment of truth, confirms what so many people have suspected about these conservative media operations all along. Let's watch what happened, because you need to hear it in her own words to understand just how revealing this moment was. She's talking about how Caleb has continued with the same grift, then catches herself and tries to play it off as a mistake. Excuse me, I meant grit, not grift. It's been a long day. Trust me, honey, we know you're not grifters. Except she just accidentally admitted that's exactly what they are. That's what a Freudian slip does. It reveals the truth you've been trying to hide. And what Erika Kirk revealed in that moment is that she knows, deep down, that what her late husband was doing and what these organizations continue to do is a grift. It's not about principles. It's not about conservative values. It's about monetizing outrage and building personal wealth and power by telling people what they want to hear. This matters because Turning Point USA and similar organizations have built empires by positioning themselves as authentic voices fighting for real Americans against the establishment. They've raised millions of dollars. They've built massive platforms. They've influenced elections and policy. And the entire time, the people running these operations apparently know it's a grift. They just slipped up and said it out loud. Think about all the small dollar donors who've sent money to these groups believing they're supporting a genuine movement. Think about all the young conservatives who've gotten involved thinking they're part of something meaningful. And the widow of the founder just accidentally confirmed that at least on some level, she understands this is all a performance designed to extract money and influence from true believers. Now, some people might say, I'm reading too much into a simple mistake. She just misspoke. She meant to say grit and accidentally said grift. It happens, but that's not how Freudian slips work. You don't accidentally say a completely different word that perfectly describes what you're doing unless that word is already living in your subconscious. You don't slip and say grift when you mean grift unless some part of you knows that grift is actually the accurate description. This wasn't a minor mispronunciation. This was her brain serving up the true word before she could censor it. And then the immediate panic and correction just confirms that she knew exactly what she'd revealed. Even people who aren't typically aligned with progressive politics are pointing out how bizarre and inappropriate all of this is. Tim Dillon, who's a right-leaning podcaster, commented on how strange it is that Erika Kirk is out here walking through sparklers in a glittering pantsuit talking about electing J.D. Vance just 3 months after her husband was assassinated. He pointed out that there's something deeply off about the whole thing, and he's right. Whether you agree with Charlie Kirk's politics or not, there's something profoundly disturbing about how quickly his widow has moved from grieving to campaigning, from mourning to making political endorsements for elections years in the future. This speaks to a larger truth about political operators at this level. They're not regular people who happen to have strong beliefs. They're performers playing roles in a system designed to accumulate power and wealth. The grief is performative. The ideology is performative. The outrage is performative. It's all theater designed to keep the money flowing and the influence growing. And sometimes the mask slips. Sometimes someone accidentally tells the truth. And when that happens, we get a glimpse of what's really happening behind the curtain. The reaction from Republican leadership has been telling too. Lindsey Graham was asked about Erika Kirk's endorsement of J.D. Vance for 2028. You'd think this would be a big moment. The widow of one of the most influential conservative activists in America throwing her support behind the vice president for his own presidential run. But Graham basically brushed it off. He said he's worried about tomorrow, that it's a big get for JD in terms of the future, but really the focus should be on keeping America safe and prosperous in the near term. In other words, he gave the most non-answer possible while acknowledging that, yeah, this endorsement matters, but we're not supposed to be talking about 2028 yet, so let's all just pretend this isn't happening. That response tells you everything you need to know about how uncomfortable this makes even other Republicans. Because what Erika Kirk did was say the quiet part out loud. She made explicit what everyone in these circles already knows. The succession is planned. The next candidate is chosen. J.D. Vance is being positioned as Trump's heir. And all of the political theater we're going to witness over the next few years is just window dressing on a decision that's already been made by the people who actually control the party machinery. But let's go back to that Freudian slip because it deserves more attention. When Erika Kirk said grift instead of grit, she wasn't just making a random mistake. She was revealing how people inside these operations actually think about what they're doing. They know they're selling a product. They know they're exploiting genuine fears and frustrations to build personal brands and bank accounts. They know that the outrage is manufactured, the threats are exaggerated, and the solutions they're selling won't actually solve anything because solving problems would eliminate the need for their grift. This is the conservative media ecosystem in a nutshell. It's not about governance. It's not about policy. It's about creating a perpetual sense of crisis and positioning yourself as the only person who truly understands what's happening and what needs to be done. Then you monetize that positioning through donations, merchandise, speaking fees, book deals, media appearances, and political influence. You build an empire not by actually helping people, but by keeping them angry and scared enough that they keep tuning in and paying up. And the people running these operations know this. Erika Kirk's slip proves it. She called it a grift before she could stop herself because that's what it is. And on some level, she's aware of that truth, even if she'd never admit it publicly under normal circumstances. But her subconscious betrayed her. The real word came out, and now we have confirmation straight from the source that at least one person deeply embedded in this world knows exactly what they're participating in. The question is, what happens now? Does this moment of accidental honesty change anything? Do the donors and supporters of Turning Point USA and similar organizations stop and ask themselves whether they've been played? Do they wonder if the people they've been trusting and funding actually believe in the cause, or if they're just running a sophisticated money-making operation disguised as a political movement? Probably not, because people who are deeply invested in these movements don't want to confront the possibility that they've been conned. It's too painful. It's too embarrassing. It's easier to dismiss this as a simple mistake or an irrelevant slip of the tongue than to grapple with what it actually reveals. But for anyone paying attention, for anyone who hasn't already drunk the Kool-Aid, this moment should be a wake-up call. This is what happens when you build political power on grift rather than genuine conviction. Eventually, someone slips up and tells the truth. Eventually, the mask falls off, even if just for a second. And in that second, you see exactly what's been hiding underneath all along. A machine designed to extract money and loyalty from people by pretending to fight for them while actually just enriching the people running the show. Think about how many times we've seen this pattern repeat itself. Conservative media figures building massive followings, raising tons of money, positioning themselves as champions of working-class Americans, and then getting exposed as frauds or grifters who don't actually practice what they preach or believe what they say. Think about all the Stop the Steal fundraising that enriched Trump and his allies while accomplishing nothing for the people who donated. Think about all the PACs and organizations that raise millions claiming to support conservative causes, but spend most of that money on consultant fees and overhead that just happens to go to the people running the organizations. This isn't conspiracy theory, this is documented reality. And Erika Kirk just accidentally confirmed that people inside these operations know exactly what they're doing. They're running a grift. They just usually have enough discipline not to say it out loud. But every once in a while, someone's brain betrays them. Someone accidentally tells the truth. And we get moments like this where the entire facade cracks just enough that we can see what's really underneath. Now let's talk about why Erika Kirk endorsing J.D. Vance for 2028 right now matters beyond just the awkward timing. This endorsement reveals the succession planning happening inside MAGA world. Trump is currently president. He cannot run again in 2028 due to term limits. So the question becomes who takes over the movement, who inherits the base, who gets to position themselves as Trump's legitimate successor. And apparently that person is J.D. Vance. The fact that major conservative organizations are already publicly backing him for 2028 tells you the decision has been made. The donors have aligned, the infrastructure is being built, and everyone who matters in MAGA world has been told to get on board. This is how party machines work. They don't wait for primaries to organically produce a candidate. They choose someone, clear the field, and then manufacture inevitability around that choice. By the time voters actually get to participate, the real decision has already been made. The primary is just theater to create the illusion of democratic choice. And what Erika Kirk did was pull back the curtain on that process. She made explicit what's supposed to remain implicit. She announced the succession plan before most people even realized there needed to be a succession plan. And the reason this matters is because it shows you how little agency regular voters actually have in these processes. You can show up to caucuses and primaries. You can knock on doors and make phone calls. You can donate your hard-earned money and spend your time supporting candidates. But at the end of the day, the people who actually control party infrastructure have already decided who the next nominee will be. Your participation is just there to provide democratic legitimacy to a choice that was made in private conversations between people you'll never meet. That's not democracy. That's managed decline. That's the appearance of choice without actual choice. And it's exactly why so many people feel alienated from politics, even when they technically have the right to vote and participate, because they can sense, even if they can't always articulate it, that their input doesn't actually matter when the important decisions have already been made. Erika Kirk's endorsement of J.D. Vance is part of that machine in action. She's not speaking as a private citizen expressing her personal preference. She's speaking as a representative of a major conservative organization, signaling to other elites and activists where the money and infrastructure should flow. She's telling everyone in MAGA world that J.D. Vance has been chosen and that getting behind him early is the smart play. And by doing that so early and so publicly, she's trying to create inevitability before any potential rivals can even begin to organize opposition. The problem is that she also accidentally called the whole thing a grift in the process. So now we have this perfect encapsulation of how cynical and transactional all of this really is. The people positioning J.D. Vance as Trump's heir, the people building out the infrastructure for his 2028 run, the people telling donors where to send their checks, they know it's a grift. They just usually don't say that part out loud. Erika Kirk did, and now the mask is off, even if most people want to pretend they didn't see it slip. The broader point here is about trust and legitimacy. Political movements require both to function. People need to trust that the leaders they're following actually believe in the cause. They need to feel like their participation matters. They need to believe that the system, even if imperfect, is fundamentally operating in good faith. And moments like this Freudian slip chip away at that trust. Because once you hear someone accidentally admit that it's all a grift, it's hard to unhear that. It's hard to go back to believing that these people are motivated by principle rather than profit. And maybe that's why the reaction from people like Tim Dillon and others who aren't hard-left progressives has been so skeptical. Because even people who are generally aligned with conservative politics can recognize when something feels off. Walking out through sparklers and a glitter pantsuit 3 months after your husband was assassinated to endorse the next president doesn't read as genuine. It reads as performance. And calling your organization's work a grift before correcting yourself doesn't inspire confidence. It confirms suspicions. The really damning thing is that none of this will probably matter in the long run. Erika Kirk will continue running Turning Point USA or whatever role she has in that organization. J.D. Vance will continue positioning himself for 2028. Conservative donors will continue writing checks. And the base will continue showing up to rallies and voting for whoever they're told to vote for. Because admitting you've been conned is harder than just continuing to believe. Because walking away from a movement you've invested time and identity in is harder than overlooking a few red flags. Because the alternative, admitting that maybe you've been manipulated by grifters who don't actually care about you, is too psychologically painful for most people to confront. But that doesn't mean we should stop pointing these things out. It doesn't mean we should let moments like this pass without comment. Because every time someone accidentally tells the truth, every time the mask slips, even for a second, we have an opportunity to document it and show people what's really happening. We have a chance to build a record that maybe eventually enough people will look at and realize they've been had. That maybe over time, the contradictions and hypocrisies and admissions pile up until they're impossible to ignore. That's why I'm not shutting up. That's why I'm going to keep making these videos, even when people threaten me and attack me and try to silence me. Because moments like Erika Kirk's Freudian slip matter, they reveal truth. And truth, even when it's uncomfortable and even when people don't want to hear it, is worth fighting for. So if you're with me, if you believe that calling out grifters and exposing how these machines really work matters, then stay engaged. Share this information. Keep asking questions. And don't let anyone tell you that you're crazy for noticing when someone accidentally admits they're running a grift, because they are running a grift. Erika Kirk just said so herself. She tried to take it back, but it was too late. The truth was already out there. And now everyone who is paying attention knows exactly what she and people like her really think about the movement they're profiting from. They think it's a grift. They just usually don't get caught saying it out loud.